They got me handcuffed. I'm down in Central Booking, handcuffed.
Hi, my name is Kamal Franklin. I am a lawyer and activist with the Malcolm X Grassroots Movement and a part of the Stay Free video project. Today's video is about basic know your rights, how to stay safe when confronted by the police. With us tonight we have Bob Boyle. Bob Boyle is a noted expert criminal defense attorney and civil rights activist attorney who has a long history representing movement activists and organizers. Also we have Rod Stars, who's an activist, artist, and member of the music group Rebel Diaz, and of the group Rebel Diaz Arts Collective, a new community space in the South Bronx. Welcome, thank you both for being here. We wanted to start off by asking, first with you Bob, some simple know your rights information. So when do the police have a right to stop you, actually, in the street?
There are various levels of police intrusion under the law. For the police to stop someone who has not committed a crime in their presence, they need what's called a reasonable suspicion to inquire further inquiry. I know that it's purposely vague because you can see within that it gives the police a lot of discretion. For example, if someone looks ill and is walking down the street, the police have a right to stop that person because they have a reason to do so. The person looks ill. Maybe the person needs help. Obviously, you know, someone who's 10 years old who's alone on the street, the police have a reason to stop that person. But you can also see within that there's plenty of room for abuse. And I think people in communities of color see that all the time. For example, simply being in the lobby of a public housing project when you don't necessarily live there. They're just visiting someone. They're not committing a crime, but the law is vague enough and loose enough that it would give the police the right to approach someone and ask them a question. Now, if the police approaches someone and asks a question and the answer is perfectly valid, I'm in the lobby of a public housing project, I'm waiting for my friend who lives on the 10th floor, we're going to the movies, and that's a reasonable answer, it's supposed to end there. And if the police follow their own rules. So that is the most minimal level of intrusion. If, let's say, the answer to the question gives the police further suspicion, or upon approach to the person, they see the mythical bulge in their pocket, or the, you know, glassine envelope sticking out of their waistline, the intrusion can get more severe. The police can pat someone down.
Before we go there, let's talk a little bit about what should someone do if they were approached by the police. And the police haven't placed them under arrest at this point, but the police are stating that they have reasonable suspicion, which means the person is not free to go, of course, at that stage, but they haven't been formally arrested. In general, what do you think someone's reaction should be to the police's approach at that point?
Well, I mean, there's what the police have the right to do under the law, and then there's something that people on the street should do for their own survival. I think everyone on the street has to take into account the time, place, and conditions. Yes, the police might be violating your rights by asking you, simply because you're walking down the street at night in the South Bronx, what are you doing there? Are they allowed to do that? Absolutely not. But someone should take into account the situation. If you're alone on the street, you're a person of color, and particularly, you know, it's young men of color who get a lot of the abuse, and you're alone and it's late at night, there's 2 police officers and yourself, you know, even though they can't do that, it might not be the best thing just to say, you can't do that, and start running away. You could end up a statistic. So I think it's important to know your rights and what the police can and cannot do, because let's say you're witnessing something like that. You could see one of your neighbors being harassed. You could know that that's wrong, and you can help that person later on and be a witness. But everyone has to look at it in terms of the time, place, and conditions under which such abuse happens. Is there a place sometimes to make a stand? Absolutely. But everyone has to decide that for themselves. And the most important thing, I think, in that situation is your safety. You don't want to be a statistic later and have the police come up with a story like he was reaching for something in his back pocket, and, you know, we thought it was a gun, and there's a tragedy. So it's difficult to say what people should do. People have to know their rights and then decide on that basis, on the conditions, what they should do at a given time.
Well, so as a community activist, you've probably seen in the community, obviously, lots of police and lots of stops. Do you feel a lot of times the police are following the proper procedures from what you know?
I mean, I don't know. Definitely not. Definitely not. I definitely think that the police target young black and brown males, target immigrants, especially in the South Bronx. There's been a large increase in the immigrant population, predominantly coming from Mexico, and you know, even from just, you know, my situation being like, there was a lot of, you know, just young people. A lot of young people picked up in these sweeps that they're doing in our communities. Because what happens a lot is that when communities are being gentrified, when there's gentrification going on in communities, part of that process is sweeping the streets of anything that's not going to look, you know what I mean, pretty to these real estate developers that are coming into our communities. And so the first targets become young black and brown males, young people in general, the hip-hop generation being criminalized, and immigrants. So I think that definitely we see that there are definitely targets by the police, and we definitely feel that there's a, you know, widespread abuse of people's rights.
Bob, I'm with the Malcolm X grassroots movement, as you know, and we do a cop watch. We generally tell people when they're stopped by the police to ask if they're free to go, to find out what the next step would be in terms of the police involvement with them. Do you recommend that as one simple way in which people can try to find out a little bit more information about why they're being detained?
Yes, absolutely. Am I free to go? Particularly after you have answered the questions. What people also don't know, that there is no rule in the federal Constitution that requires someone to show ID. That is not, a lot of people think that's if the police ask you for ID, you have to show ID. No, you don't have to show ID. That's not, without, once again, without any other basis for the stop. If there's another basis for the stop, maybe they can proceed further. But simply, you know, you stop, where are you headed, let me see your ID, that's impermissible. You know, once again, I get back to the reality of the situation, having represented indigent defendants for many, many years, and hearing stories in the, you know, in the bullpens of people's everyday experiences. For people of color, and as you were saying, mostly young men of color, the experience of being put up against a wall and frisked, a lot of young people and young people of color, males, think that that's perfectly okay, because it happens so often. It's part. They're just happy that they're not busted, because they may look like somebody who may have done something or may not have done something. But the police absolutely have no right to put you up against a wall and frisk you for no reason.
Under what conditions can the police frisk you? And what's the difference between a frisk and a search?
Well, once again, this gets very technical. If someone is stopped who hasn't been observed committing a crime, and this is, I'm talking mostly in New York procedure now, and the procedure is different under the federal Constitution. If for some reason the police officer has a reason to proceed further, like the person refuses to answer where they're going or seems evasive, and the officer has an articulable reason to fear for his or her safety, they can take action for their safety. They see a bulge in the waist, see a bulge, you know, they can put their hand there in the waist. Action for, you know, for safety. So that I would consider a frisk. But there has to be a reason for that. It can't be for no reason. There has to be a reason for the officer's safety, for the public safety, or perhaps to destroy some evidence. It can't be just, I don't like the way you look, you're walking down the street, you know, spread them. And the line between a frisk and a search is a fine one. Certainly after a formal arrest, a complete search is, other than a body cavity search, is permissible.
But you're talking about the community. Do you see the distinction between